In today's video, I'm going to be explaining the full theory of Rick Grimes being immune to the zombie virus. And I'll be specifically talking about the show version of Rick Grimes since the comics have already ended, while the show Rick story hasn't. The reason as to why this theory exists is because of many subtle references and things characters have said in the show that you might have missed. And we're going to be going over all of those things and truly determining, is Rick Grimes immune to the Walking Dead? So obviously, guys, it's no surprise that Rick Grimes has been alive for what, like 10 to 15 years now in the apocalypse? And that's very impressive, but, you know, it's not like there aren't other people considering there's Daryl Dixon, Negan, Maggie. So what makes him so unique from the rest that could support the fact that he could be immune? Well, I'm actually going to explain all of that, but we have to go all the way back to the beginning of the outbreak. So as the outbreak is starting, you know, all hell is breaking loose. We can also see that in Fear the Walking Dead. You know, the military's falling apart. They're shooting up civilians.
They're jumping napalm in the streets.
But where is Rick Grimes? Rick Grimes is in a coma. Now, right off the bat, that's a pretty low odd. Being in a coma as the outbreak of a deadly virus is starting that's going to basically wipe out the entire world. That on its own is pretty rare, but isn't that impressive because, you know, you'd obviously think, okay, well, that person's going to die.
Nurse, help!
But that's the thing, Rick didn't. He woke up out of the coma. And that's what this theory revolves around, the fact that he was in a coma during the outbreak and still woke up and was alive. I think he was the only one in the world that actually successfully pulled that off. There were definitely other people in comas or in hospital beds, but, you know, with the military coming in, I bet they all just shot him up, right? So how does that have anything to do with him being immune? Well, that's actually going to go into two categories now. One's going to be more of a scientific explanation, and the other's going to be more of a superpower type thing. I'll explain the superpower way first because, you know, it's obviously cooler. So here's how the superpower theory goes. Is basically, you know, Rick gets shot and gets put into a coma. And we're assuming that the outbreak probably started a few days after this, or maybe even the same day, because we know that a few episodes later, it shows that Shane did come to visit Rick when he was in his coma. And Rick did have a bit of a beard by then, so he didn't have a beard when he got shot. So we're assuming it was a few days after, you know? Anyways, it doesn't really matter because it's confirmed Shane did come to visit him when the outbreak started because, you know, all these people were getting shot in the streets and all this stuff, right? And he was trying to save Rick, right? So he obviously wasn't able to. He had to leave Rick there. But a very important key detail that happened in this entire thing was that the power went out, right? And Shane didn't really know what to do with all the machines that Rick was hooked up to. And at this time, Shane didn't have any obsession with Lori or any bad thoughts about Rick, so it's not like he was hoping that Rick would die. He was actually hoping Rick would survive and that he could get him out of there. So if we look closely at this scene, there's a part where Shane puts his head to Rick's chest. And then a feeling of just distraught hits him, and then he just gets really sad and closes Rick's eyes. Now, obviously at the time, like, I think he thought Rick was dead. And it wasn't fully confirmed as to why he did that until later on in this episode, where he tells Lori he did not feel a heartbeat on Rick.
There were no doctors there. It was just me. He was hooked up to machines, and I did not know what to do. I even took my ear and I put it on his chest and I listened to a heartbeat and I did not hear one.
So Shane genuinely thought Rick had died at that moment. I mean, you even saw by his reaction from Rick coming back, like, he did not expect that. That's like unheard of. Now, maybe he was wrong, right? So maybe all the gunshots in the hallways, he just mixed it up and thought he didn't hear a heartbeat or something. Or maybe he genuinely didn't hear a heartbeat and Rick died. But this outbreak, this virus, is what brought Rick back to life. Rick is the Walking Dead. It's something in Rick Grimes' blood that's fueled by this virus that keeps him alive and is the reason he's still alive today. Oh, well, what about all these other people that are alive? Okay, yeah, sure, but who has gone through so much? I mean, think about the prison sickness in season 4. Everybody got sick, but you know who didn't? Rick. Okay, yeah, some others didn't get sick. Okay, well, how about the fact that he got impaled by a rusty bar and was able to survive for like 3 hours after that? And even after shooting up the bridge and getting washed up on shore and losing tons of blood, he was still alive. And to further enforce that is the fact that he's been at the CRM for like 8 years now and hasn't been able to return or even say hi to his family. What makes him so important from the rest? Well, maybe it's the fact that this virus is what keeps him alive, but I don't necessarily think this makes him immortal. So what I think this virus does is it just makes him stronger overall, but it also makes him immune to the bites, but not immune to death. So let's say if he were to get bit, he wouldn't turn, but you know, he could lose a lot of blood and still survive, but eventually he would die, right? So it's not like he could get shot in the head and live. He would die. So maybe that's why the CRM's keeping him, is the fact that they know he's not immortal. He's not necessarily a cure to the Walking Dead or anything like that, but he's just really strong and he has some traits that they're trying to figure out how he has. And maybe they just want to keep him for status as an asset to other communities as to look what we have and you don't, right? And that could very well make a lot of sense, right? I mean, why he's not allowed to leave, why he's trying escaping and he's not able to. But that would also kind of destroy the fact that this universe isn't really about that stuff, because the Walking Dead universe is really just like our world, but just with an outbreak that started. So now I'm going to talk about the more scientific category of this theory, which could be a lot more realistic and make a lot more sense, especially with some hints that AMC have done with other webisodes they made. So this category of the theory does revolve around the fact that he was in a coma, but it's really important to understand the timelines of this. So we know that Rick gets shot and he gets put into a coma, and it's later revealed Shane did visit him in the hospital, you know, as I was saying earlier, but Rick did have that beard. So it's obvious it was a few days after, or maybe even a week after. So that's really important to know. If the outbreak did start after Rick was in his coma, that could mean that something about him being hooked up to IV tubes and all these machines prevented him from breathing the air when the outbreak first started, which could give him immunity to this virus. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever asked yourself this question. I have multiple times. How did Rick survive in his coma for so long? I mean, think about it. He was in his coma for like 2 months without being attended to. How do you survive, you know, especially with an outbreak of a virus? Well, he actually was attended to in a webisode of The Walking Dead called The Oath. I didn't really watch this, but I know that there is a nurse, and it's about the hospital that Rick was in. There was this nurse that stuck around after the outbreak started and continued attending to the patients. And as far as I know, Rick is the only one that lived. Now, I want you guys to think about the odds of that. Being put in a coma, and then an outbreak of a deadly virus starting, wiping out the entire humanity pretty much, and still waking up out of that coma. The odds of that are significantly low, especially without the fact that there's good people who would attend to you while that's happening. And that's one of the reasons I think that they made this webisode as a sort of closure as to how Rick survived that, right? So maybe something about that is what gives him immunity. And, you know, since nobody else has ever done that, it can't be disproven, right? So this doesn't make him any stronger or anything like that, or make him more resilient to death. It just means that he's immune from the actual virus. And if Rick Grimes is immune, I personally would want this category of the theory to be the reason why. And once again, this supports the narrative as to why he's stuck at the CRM for so long. So we know that Jadis was trying to capture Gabriel and Negan originally, right? But she wasn't able to. And she eventually landed on Rick and got Rick in the CRM. I think it was just by coincidence, Rick was the one that is special, and that's the reason he wasn't able to return for so long. And to be honest, I don't know much about this A and B stuff that happens at the CRM. I didn't watch World Beyond, but I do know that like there's tests performed on people, like maybe with like walker bites. I didn't read too much into it, but maybe there was a test performed on Rick where he got bit, right? And he just never turned. And that's obviously pretty shocking. And you know, that's probably why he hasn't returned for so long. They're trying to get to the bottom of this as to why this happened. He's been trying to escape. They're not letting that happen. And guys, there's no way to disprove this theory because there's literally not enough evidence to, you know, suggest otherwise. The only way we're gonna find out is in the Rick and Michonne spinoff, because that's gonna be the full closure to their story and as to why Rick was there for so long. But we're just gonna have to see, and I'm honestly really excited, and I'll be very happy with whichever way it goes. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you guys believe in this theory, or do you guys think it's just very far-fetched? I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and peace.